San Francisco Giants trade deadline outlook. This is Ryan Finkelstein, managing editor at Just Baseball. Got Clay Snowden with me, one of our writers, and we are talking about this team that is in the middle. Last year was it best record in the National League. This year, fringe wild card team. And I think we're going to talk about pieces they might add, but I think you and me are on the same page here. Shouldn't they sell? I mean, I get that they want to win and they want to be a perpetual contender. That's great. It's a great franchise. I get it. But you got Jock Pederson, who has numbers that I think are inflated for what he actually is. You got a guy like a Wilmer Flores. You got a lot of these pieces that aren't building blocks that contenders could use, maybe replenish the farm system, take a year off, and go back at it next year when you have a team that maybe is a little more well-rounded.
Yeah, this is a very top-heavy farm system, and I think adding to it would be huge for them. You have an old team. I mean, you have Tommy La Stella on your team. You have Brandon Belt. The team's getting old, and it's starting to show. Brandon Crawford has not been the same player that he was last year as well. I think they should do, and I'm not a fan of retools, but if you want to call it that, trade a couple of players, but still try to get into next year. I don't think that works in baseball very well. It's rare. The Twins pulled it off this year, but even they have a ton of flaws. I do think it's time to kind of conservatively sell. You see the Dodgers and Padres in the same division, positioning themselves to make legitimate moves to climb to the top and prepare themselves for October. And then you see Darren Ruff getting everyday at bats, and he's a fine player, but this team has too much mediocre on it. I know that they go platoon heavy. I know that their pitching last year was awesome, and that's what carried them. Look at the roster, look how it's performed, and look how you think it will perform going forward. And there's just a lot of questions.
There is, and I mean, I will say you might catch a stray here from Arm on knocking his guy Darren Ruff. I don't know if you're still working for us after that comment, but if you look at where this team's at, like they're always put in the conversation. Like they're at one point they were one of the favorites to get Juan Soto. I just don't get it. I don't see them having enough capital when it comes to prospects to make that deal without just completely depleting everything they have. And if they have Juan Soto, I still don't know. Like, again, it's part of the problem of playing in the NL West right now. You got this juggernaut in the Dodgers, and I feel like you might have the one dream season like they did in 2021 where you can compete with them. But outside of that, what are you really going to do to go up against that team?
There's two divisions in this right now. You got the Dodgers and Padres, who are really battling good teams, kind of, projected to do some damage. Then at the bottom, you have the Diamondbacks, who are building, have a great prospect system, some young, exciting talent. People are kind of starting to buzz about the Diamondbacks. And the Rockies, who have started to make some moves, started to climb, still some young players, a really good prospect system that's getting better throughout the year. And then you have the Giants, just like floating somewhere in the middle, and they need to decide which direction it needs to be. I could see this getting bad in the next couple of years. And if, I guess the front office is probably saying Brandon Belt and Crawford, and they have enough age on that team that's like, okay, we have to keep pushing because we can't really trade those players right now and get good value. Like, do we just keep going for it instead of rebuild? But I think you and I are on the same boat here. They're in no man's lane, and it's time to kind of focus on the future.
But considering the fact that we believe that they want to contend, I still imagine that they might add here. And again, we're now joking that every show that we're recording here, we're talking about Jose Quintana. But like, it's just, I feel like that bin of player, whether it's a pitcher or a hitter, Ian Happ maybe is a solid ad for them. Benintendi. And there's names out there. I just don't think they move the needle. And I almost don't even think it's worth kind of talking about it until it happens, because when it happens, we can kind of explore, all right, this is what the Giants did. Does this push them ahead of some of these playoff teams, some of these wild card teams? But I mean, I even look at the Phillies, right? And I'm not even sure like how close these teams are in the standings right now. Let me look to see how far apart they are. You have the Giants at 48 wins, the Phillies at 50. Like, the Phillies at least have, I think, more high-end talent on that roster, right? Like, are the Giants really going to get into this mix?
I just don't see it. I just do not think. I think the difference between the Phillies and the Giants is quite obvious. They may be similar in terms of overall record, but think about the ceiling of each individual player. And when you think about some of these older players on the Giants or platoon players, they're nice options as for what they are. But how high is that ceiling?
Yeah.
And when the lights are bright in October, can they rise to the occasion? I know that they were good last year. I know people are going to say that. And we kind of sound like clowns, almost dogging them this year. But there's a reason why you don't see that many teams with a roster like that win 100 games. It's because it's unlikely.
Yeah.
And we're kind of starting to see that this year.
We'll see what they do. I think this is a team that, if nothing else, just stand pat then. I just, to me, to give up prospect capital is just not smart. But we'll see what they do. We'll see if they can go on a magical run. I think there's teams every year that we count out. Maybe the Giants can rediscover that 2021 magic and find a way to at least get into a wild card. But that is our outlook on the San Francisco Giants at this deadline. Make sure you're following all of our coverage of the deadline at justbaseball.com. Follow our podcast here, State of the Division, for all of your trade deadline outlooks. Also, the articles you can find online, and as well as our YouTube channel at State of the Division.